Hi, I'm Sarabi, a designer and a writer, and I'm here with the Global Head of Sustainability at Dr Martens, Tuze Mekik.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about Genix Nappa, the new shoe made from reclaimed leather.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you? Welcome to DMs.
Thank you. In your beautiful archive space with all these stunning Dr Martens. I love it.
Yeah,
Thank you
a
for
lot of
inviting us.
history.
Yeah, a lot of history. So first, I would like to know more about your role as Global Head of Sustainability. You've been at Dr Martens for 7 years now?
Yes, correct.
Long time. How is it? How's the role? What do you do?
So yes, I joined 2017 after spending 8 years in another fashion company. And I said, I will not stay here, more than 5 years. And here I am, 7th year. It's been really fun. So since I joined, I've led sustainability and corporate responsibility initiatives and the whole agenda and the strategy at Dr. Martens. So it's been really amazing journey, and we are still on it. But yeah, it's a great company to think about sustainability.
Yes, like your Genix Nappa, the new recycled leather shoe that you've just come out with. Question about this. So Genix Nappa is closing the loop with reclaimed leather, and can you tell us a bit about the process of collecting waste leather and how it's turned back into shoes, and what is hydrotanglement? This big word that comes up when we talk about reclaimed leather.
Yeah, no, of course. So, we can talk about the whole context about the sustainability, but Genix Nappa came as potentially a scalable option for us a few years back. And it's a UK-based company who makes has the innovation and the technology to be able to do the product. And we've been talking to them for a while now. So what it is that they collect leather scraps from the European tanneries.
Can we open this up?
Yes, definitely. Let me just pull this because there are numbers on it. So this is the raw material. So these are the trims that comes from tanneries. These are not tan leather. This is called wet blue process. Okay. So the tanneries, they cut this before they work with to make it leather, and these are just normally goes to landfill. And the technology is basically take this, turn into smaller pieces, and this is actually what I'm talking about. It's like a normal thing to do, but it's like a massive factory into these, and then they turn into, with a kind of different processes, turn into this kind of like very fluffy material.
Oh, nice. Oh, it's so soft.
It's soft. It's basically fibers. They're very soft fibers. And in the meantime, obviously, there's a lot of cleaning happens. And then after that, they kind of mix it with using very very high-powered water injection. They weave, so-called weave into sheets like this, and then in between the two sheets of the materials, there's also an enforcement of textile coating, and then becomes like a sheet like this.
Does that help it seal
to make it
in?
Exactly. So the two layers, they bond together with the hydrotanglement, which is basically like really kind of powered water. And then they bond together to make the material. And after that, they put a water-based PU to be able to give the color and the texture for the material that we use today for Genix Nappa. But I think the exciting part of it is that, first of all, it's taking the material that otherwise would go to landfill, and actually it opens up a lot of opportunity of using other type of waste as well. So the technology itself is the one that really exciting for us, and that's why we also invested last year to the company.
Wow. So you could use other materials as well in the same sort of process?
We're hoping to. So the company is working on that and trying different things. So this is just a start.
Wow, that's really cool. That's very, very interesting. What other sort of materials would you be able to use? Is it like wood and cotton and fabric waste?
I mean, this is obviously their technology as well. The company that we're partnering with is called Generation Phoenix. I think they're testing different materials like, any waste that can turn into. So, for example, what we're also trialing with them, can we just take any waste of uppers in any leather condition, just turn into fibers and then put back again as another material. So their technology is really interesting, and they're investing into make a lot of research about it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Where do you get the actual waste leather from? Is it your old shoes that are...
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's the exciting part. Right now, the circle is not fully closed.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the things that is, we wanted to kind of understand how much is possible. Because if you think about it, leather is contaminated when people use it, right? So, and the type of fiber you want to get, it shouldn't be contaminated. Right. So there's a lot of kind of cleaning or processing needs to happen for it to become a compliant material. And I think the technology that they have has potentials to kind of enable that. And the leather comes from European tanneries at the moment, because I think localization is important. So you don't want to ship waste from around the world to places. So right now is European, and they're all certified to environmental. So we know that the leather comes off as a waste. It comes also from the tanneries that, to a certain degree, that has some certain social and environmental practice in place.
Yeah, so it's the waste leather. Fascinating. We have like a really similar thing within textiles and recycling clothing. Yeah. Because a lot of the time you can't just take the fabric from, like, say, a shirt and put it straight through one of these machines, because you have to take off the buttons, and that's manual waste as well. Yeah. So there's so many issues with recycling, and I'm glad that you've spoken about that. In general, leather can be quite a contentious topic. Vegan leather, for example, is really good for omitting animal cruelty, but it's also made from fossil fuels. And some people argue that leather is already a recycled material. As we've spoken about, you can get byproducts from leather and chop them up. Is reclaimed leather the answer to ethical consumption? Should everything be made from recycled leather, or as much as possible? What do you think?
So I'll go back a little bit about a bigger context here, especially for Dr. Martens. So we've been here since 1960s, and we're a global business, born in UK, made from the innovation, and leather is a very important material for us. And leather is an amazing material, actually, for the footwear, because it's durable, it is versatile, it is breathable. So actually, it's a natural material that has been used for decades and years for human, right? It's an amazing product. And yes, you can tell it might be a byproduct of food industry right now, and especially the leather we use is a byproduct of the food and meat industry. But it carries also certain carbon footprint, because it has a value. So for us, when we look at our carbon footprinting, a few years ago, the first time, leather became the biggest impact area. So if we wanted to focus our efforts where the biggest impacts are or going to be, we had to start from leather. It was almost like an elephant in the room. And I think we're looking at it in two ways. One, leather is going to be there. Leather is an important material for us, and these kind of alternative materials, there's definitely a space for them in the future, and that's why we invested, and we wanted to try, test and learn the consumer reaction, the wearer's reaction to this, how it's going to wear. But at the same time, we're also working on the leather. Leather that is traceable, not causing deforestation, coming from regenerative agriculture or the cattle farms. It's going to be a really interesting type of leather that in the future we're hoping to, that's going to be more available. I think regeneration has a lot of, you're hearing a lot in the sustainable space, and I think there is definitely something in there that we are also looking at. Could this be a future of the leather, and how we can enable that? So we are thinking how we can make the leather better and more responsible, all the way in the supply chain, the value chain, all the way to the farm. And at the same time, what are the other alternatives, circular, like using waste leather or using other type of materials. And I think, it's still new where we come up with the Genix Nappa. It's 5,000 pieces now, and the people are wearing. We want to hear from everybody and learn, so we can actually continue to come up with these innovative materials that is going to be interesting for the future.
Stunning. You were talking about making the leather that you do use even better through the value chain and the supply chain. What does that look like? What sort of changes are you hoping for within the whole process of actual leather rather than reclaimed leather?
So one of the things for us is important, first of all, the tanneries that we partner with. And for example, the leather that we buy from they come from tanneries who are Leather Working Group certified, which is a certification to check the environmental and social standards of the tanneries. They look at waste and water and electricity. And all of our leather, first of all, comes from those tanneries that like a high standard for LWG. LWG also looks at the traceability. So back to the slaughterhouses where the leather comes from. So you can actually use the system to, at the moment, we're above 85% of our leather are traceable to slaughterhouses, which is great.
That's
but
amazing.
We want to do 100%, which we're going to close it in the next 2 years. But that's not enough. Then you have to go to the cattle farms and where the animals, bird farms. So it's quite complex if you think about the value chain of the leather. But everybody's working around the same thing. So meat packers and food industry, leather, I think there's a lot of collaboration happening. Is it fast enough? Perhaps not, but I think everybody's, with the legislation coming in on the deforestation, for example, I think these efforts is going to be increased in the future, and we have a part to play.
Yeah, of course. You've also, so it's really interesting that you talk about traceability. So I don't know if you've heard of the EU law that's hoping to get fashion passports.
Yes, we heard loud and clear.
This affects you.
Yes.
Is this part of your plan to work towards that as a goal then in
Absolutely.
general?
I think they call it DPP, right? Digital Product Passport.
Yeah.
Is something that is super interesting, and how quickly it's coming is amazing. So if you're selling Europe, you have to have a DPP. So we are already working on that. I'm not sure if the fashion industry is ready for this huge change, but I think it's definitely given a lot of push to the many companies to kind of speed up their processes.
Get things in gear, get things in motion. You've also got, is it ReWair in general?
Yes.
Which is like repairing old shoes to resell.
Well, let me tell you about all of these things.
Me.
I know, we're not following any more of the questions, but it's just so exciting because these are the things that actually, that I love and I'm passionate about, to be able to influence the business, to look at things differently. So back in 2 years ago, we partnered with Depop to have a store in Depop, online shop.
Do they have a store?
Well, on Depop app, there's a Dr Martens authorized, like official Depop Dr Martens store.
Okay.
So we work with the repair partner, so to sell restored, refurbished, boots in Depop shop. And that went really well. People really reacted and they love it. Everything was, all the metrics that we look at, whether this is successful or not, like they all passed. And that gave us an encouragement to actually do it ourselves. So that's how the ReWair came. And we said, okay, we're gonna, really try to do it ourselves. And we started in the US. ReWair website is like a sub-website. And we partner with the two organizations on the technology side and on the operational side. So we are actually taking back from the people, they can bring to the stores, and we take them and refurbish, resole, clean, whatever is needed, and then resell. So I think that's going to be an interesting part of all of the kind of fashion sustainability agenda, to be able to look at like, what does that circularity means? What does resale means? And it's not the same for every brand. And for us, it was a perfect thing to do, really. And it's really going well.
I love that. So the power of collaboration has helped with innovating your ideas right?
Totally.
So collaborating with Depop has opened up this whole new avenue.
Exactly. They gave us a first
I love that.
step.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about scaling. So scaling an innovative project like this through Generation Phoenix, is
Yes.
that what they are called? It always comes up in conversation when we're talking about big sustainable ideas and actually can we do them on a bigger scale. It can be really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a future where Dr. Martens could revisit smaller collections with leather from local farms, for example? I don't know if you've read Field Fork Fashion.
No.
If you haven't, definitely read
Okay,
it.
gotta send me that, yeah.
I'll tell you about it afterwards, but
Okay.
it's basically this designer works with a farm and uses every single bit of the cow and sells burgers at her collection launch. So from the cow that she made the handbags from. So yeah, I know that you have a smaller collection in Northampton, right, where there's British-made shoes from there. But yeah, what do you think of scaling up, scaling down?
Well, scaling up, and I think that's why this material was interesting because, because scaling up and finding the right material is so difficult. And I think a lot of companies is struggling with that. And when you find something that feels like you can scale up, you want to really, and that's why we invested. And so you need partners for that. The technology they have, we wouldn't be able to do it anyway because we are shoemakers, not material makers.
Yeah.
We buy our materials and we make shoes. So that's why partnering with them, and I think generally fashion and R&D is underinvested. I think a lot of companies should be thinking about that, like how can you invest to other opportunities, circularity opportunities, and the companies they're doing these things. And I think the question about like if every Dr. Martens is going to be made from recycled materials, I don't think so, because definitely, like I said, there's a space for the leather, but the type of leather that is, perhaps better leather, that's how I call it, like in a very simple term, traceable, regenerative, and it's still beautiful and still maybe it's not going to look like the leather that we have today. Maybe it's going to be having some scars on it and unique. I think there's definitely a space for that. And
what
actually,
they call that wabi sabi, I think.
Do they?
In Japan.
I don't know.
when things have like scars, or
Scars,
they're imperfect, but they're also perfect in their imperfections.
Exactly. So maybe that's the future of the leather as we are imagining right now. But I really think that there's a space for that, because like I said, leather is amazing. And I think to your point about this kind of local, we're definitely thinking about these things. It's not easy. We actually tried, we did a trial, just the UK.
How did it go?
Only UK. It was interesting. I think you can see that it's doable to a degree, but the whole how many you can do it is a question. Like, is there enough leather like that? Certainly not in the UK.
But
it's
have to look
definitely
at like sustainability from two perspectives, right? Like sustainability in terms of environment, and sustainability in terms of like, will this be able to fund my business? Will this be able to even fund
There's always
itself?
that commercial elements of it. So when you look at these things, I think we are trying, and we're not shying away trying and saying that perhaps we failed in some trials, and this one was a bit like that. It was not a failure, it's definitely a lot of learning, but at the moment it was not scalable.
What was the actual project?
It was about finding, so there were some regenerative farms in the UK, and using those leather skins, turn into leather in a UK tannery, go to the Made in England factory of Dr. Martens and make shoes. And we have few shoes like that. Wow. But can you scale it? No. One day, could that be a project, a capsule collection? Yes, that's the word that I was looking for, perhaps. But one of the things that we were very clear from the beginning is that we didn't want to do just the small things. Like, we wanted to have a kind of impact across. So that's why we're working on leather, all of the tanneries, or having a traceability, or all of our heel loops come from, recycled material. So we wanted to look at from across the board, and that's how you make the biggest impact. Yeah. But obviously, like Genix Nappa is a new thing. You have to do kind of test and trial before launching millions of pair with the Genix Nappa, who you don't know how it's gonna work, right, in the wearer's feet. So, and that was a bit like that too. So we need to think through about, but we learned a lot through that process. You know, what does that regenerative means? How do we calculate some of the kind of environmental impact of all of that? Today, companies, they have to report on their carbon footprint, right? So all of these are levers to reduce your carbon footprint ultimately. So how does it all kind of come together for the net zero 2040 agenda and the target we set? So, and that little project, you know, we're still looking at it, we're still learning of it, and we're still thinking of it. We're working with our perhaps tanneries to see whether there are opportunities in our current value chain, but it's not ready yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Little trials, you're
Yes.
taking from these little trials and getting inspiration to make a big impact across the business.
Yes.
Basically. Not a question that I've got in here, but we've kind of touched on your carbon footprint, and I wanted to talk about your sustainable strategy. People, product, planet, right?
Yes, correct.
Those three things. How are these helping you get to your net zero target? You have a net zero target?
Yes, we do. We actually had a verified by Science Based Target Initiative last year. Well, this year, 2023 basically.
Big question.
So, I mean, it's basically, you know, when I joined back in 2017, this is something that we wanted to kind of clearly define what does sustain to mean for Dr. Martens. And I think in that attempt, first of all, we did what is called materiality assessment. And materiality assessment look at, as Dr. Martens, what is your stakeholder impact, you know, to different areas in the world, you know, chemicals, waste, materials, people, human rights. So we did like a big assessment. We partnered with an external organization. And then the outcome of that actually informed the strategy. So the outcome of that was like, well, as Dr. Martens, these are the big things that you need to really address if you wanted to drive the agenda and be a leader in some of these areas. So we used that to create the sustainability, the strategy, which, you know, all of the things that we said that we're going to do, the commitments that we put out there are the material areas that we wanted to make change. And putting a public commitment out there on these areas was definitely a big, kind of almost like culminated everybody to be able to achieve those commitments. Net zero came later, and we worked with an external company, a consultant, to understand our carbon footprint. And surprise, surprise, the things that they were material actually were also some of the biggest impact of the carbon hotspots. So it kind of worked well, kind of told us that these are the things you need to work on, you know, if you want to have a big kind of focus all of your efforts. And I think we are kind of, you know, through our corporate comms, through our internal engagement, we talk about that. And people are working against those targets, against those strategical pillars. And the other important thing is that it becomes part of the business strategy, not just a sustainability strategy. We call it DOCS strategy, DOCS. And every element of the business strategy have sustainability in it. So for example, for the D, which is D2C, which is direct to consumer, there is a focus area about building a successful resale business model, and that becomes like a driver for everybody to do that. And now we have ReWair. Or in the OC, which is the consumer connection, I guess, there is about something about sustainability and durability and leading with that. So here we are, you know, we were able to bring a product out there to test and understand how we should be moving forward with this. So when you mix your sustainability strategy with the business strategy, that's when the magic happens, I guess.
Nice, all in one little pot.
Yeah, everybody understands.
It also had a little bit about these working groups that were helping you to...
Oh, you've been through annual report. Well done, you.
I've
Not everybody
been
looks at that.
With a fine-tooth
For that,
comb.
we need to give you a prize.
Thank you. What do I get? A pair of these? I'm a size 4, thank you.
They're very comfortable, I have to say.
These
very
are also
comfortable.
really comfortable.
Oh, of course,
I really like these. Sorry, they're a bit dirty, but they've done me well for the past 5 years. Very
well
happy
done.
with them. Thank you. We don't have to talk about the working group too much, but I just wanted to get an idea of what the working group actually are. What do they do? How do they help you get to these really great targets that you've put in for yourself?
So this is almost like a part of that journey, right? So we did materiality assessment, we identified the material issues and the focus areas, and we look at the business like, who are the people who needs to work on this? Because, you know, in sustainability team, we are 5 people and we're not going to do everything, right? So basically those people who, you know, work on leather, materials, quality, compliance, especially in the supply chain team, there's a big investment in that. We brought them together, and these are cross-functional working groups. And so, for example, for certain commitments, we created life cycle working group, and there was design, compliance, material team, and those working groups actually pushes for the action to achieve the commitments that we put out there. And that's how we kind of govern, the governance work like that basically. And all of these working groups, material working group, life cycle working group, operation working group, they look at the commitments in a similar category, and they all report to the sustainability committee, which is chaired by our CEO and different leadership teams, and then from that it goes to the board. So I think there's a strong governance around it, and it's visible, and everybody's passionate more than anything. You know, it's not boring, and everybody wants to add that. And I think there's a lot of good feeling around these working groups, and because that's where people can kind of create things and be, you know, maybe dead stocks, like we talk about, like, you know, let's put the leather leftovers into beautiful, unique products.
I love how it's across the whole company, and its creativity is also involved in it. That's really good.
Thinking out of the box is really important here, I guess.
What do you think are the biggest challenges in terms of circularity and meeting sustainable goals in the fashion industry right now? And I think that kind of talks to the bit where you said you're trying to close the loop, but there's a bit that you're missing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, circularity, scaling up circularity is a big challenge, as we know, generally in the fashion industry. And it needs investment. And, you know, and that investment perhaps is not as much as should happen. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. The other is educating consumer. You know, when we're now learning about the reaction to Genix Nappa from the consumer, and it's just interesting how people, you know, look at it and ask these questions, and, you know, and I think one of the things we, especially Dr. Martens, we do quality goods, timeless, you know, versatile, and you can actually use it for everything. So one of the things actually we as a company, we could be a bit part of that, educating consumer while we're also trying other materials. I think the other thing is the supply chain is very complex. You know, I think going back to the scalability of the circularity, you know, you kind of like, there is this things that is hard to close, waste back. Also because you don't want to ship waste around the world, like I said. So how do we perhaps localize a bit more? That's one of the challenges, I think. Lack of investment, complex supply chain, consumer education. I think regulation is a challenge, but it's a good challenge because, especially in Europe, you know, bringing everybody up to the same level, like, you know, I think that regulation, like DPP you mentioned, or sustainability reporting, it's going to be really important for companies, you know, to align with how they talk to consumer, and what do they mean with that. There is still a lot of grey areas in that space.
You've got very clear challenges.
Oh, I have 10 more, but I'm not going to say that.
No, those are great. I can see those being chapters of a sustainability book. But is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you, that you're like, there's this one thing about Genix Nappa that actually the world needs to know about?
Oh, well, like I said, this is a trial for us. It's just 5,000 pieces, but it's the opportunity of the innovation and the technology is interesting, and we're really hungry to learn about, you know, how it's going to perform. I think that's one of the things. So Genix Nappa, in terms of the durability test that we do for all of our products, it took some time, but finally we got it there. It's just one of the things that we wanted to see how it's going to grow.
How has it been so far? What have people Have you had any feedback from consumers so far?
It's just, when is it? We launched it in end of March, I guess. So
Lovely.
it's just very new. So we're going to have actually a review next week about like how it's going. I need to kind of look at it properly. We're going to need to look at it probably. What do they say for us? One thing I personally find it really good is they're very comfortable. They're super comfortable. There's no break-in period really. You just, you know, use it.
That's a thing. I remember when I first wore these and I couldn't walk in any other pair of
There's something
shoes.
good about that as well.
No,
you know, like you have to break them in, and there's a process, which is almost like makes it part of the whole thing. But this was like, and I think the mattness. Wow. I don't know. People go to, oh, that's interesting. That's matte. Like, you know, comparing with others, there's not shiny. It's a bit of a raw feeling about it for me personally. But you know, I'm wearing, and I'll see how it's gonna age in the future.
Love them. Let's grab a couple actually. But that's cool that you have a materials innovation team that are also looking at like every aspect of DMs that could be as sustainable as possible, like even the packaging, even the sole, even the leather. Like, yeah, I like that in general.
Yeah. I mean, there's like many materials comes now to us.
Yeah, I bet.
Banana, pineapple, mushrooms,
the mushroom
olives. Recently,
oh, really?
like I think you can turn anyways into something, right? Probably. But I think for us is very important the durability element of it, and we tried few others too, and they were not there. So that's why it's a challenge to find scalable options that works for the product and the brand. When everything comes together, it's a great opportunity. Otherwise, you know, I'm sure they would make great bags or other small leather goods. I don't know.
But not things that you literally need to wear on your feet every single day.
I think that's one of the things about vegan leather or vegan options, because all of these plant-based materials perhaps could be a better option. But durability is something we can't compromise, so that's why it's been more challenging to looking at the vegan materials, but I think the technology is going to get there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Actually wonderful to hear about the behind-the-scenes sustainability strategies from Dr. Martens.
Oh, I'm
so
happy.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to our archive at our company.